This is another episode of Mogul Live. Absolutely thrilled to have our guest here, Mr. Keli Price. Now, for anyone that has heard that name before, I'm just going to run off just a couple of titles before we bring Keli on in. Bandit with Mel Gibson, Hellfire. I'm a little bipartial here, but I did see the movie Murder at Hollow Creek at the Beverly Hills Film Festival this year, and it is really, really good. Comes out, actually came out, we're going to check with Keli, but it came out yesterday on Apple TV, as far as I know. Other movies, we're going to talk to him about Mad Props, Slant, Tender, and anyone that enjoys comedies, Reboot Camp from a couple of years ago. So with that, Keli, it's an absolute pleasure to be speaking with you today.
James, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem because it's funny because we've actually had a couple of degrees of separation throughout the years where we've either been in the same movie circle, the same people, but this is the first time I've got to sit down and really talk about your journey. So I'm really excited.
I'm excited too, man.
What I thought could be really helpful, just maybe we start at the very beginning because I didn't mention Price Productions, but that's something I'd love to bring up. But I mean, your journey, into Hollywood, can you walk us through how everything started and what that first gig was that sort of opened up doors for you?
Absolutely, yeah. So I was an actor. I was living in New York at the time. I had booked this movie called The Click that was based on a best-selling book series. And Tyra Banks was the executive producer and Alloy Entertainment, and the producers of Gossip Girl were all on board. And I remember meeting with the director, Michael Lembeck, and it was a great experience. He pulled me in the hallway after the audition and told me that I got the role and that it was going to be a franchise and all that. And I was super excited. I remember going home and telling my brother, and my brother was upstairs in the house, and he runs down the steps, super excited, and he's about to give me a hug, and he slips on the ground and hits his head, and he's down, like he's not moving, and I thought he was gone, and like we went to the hospital, and and it turns out he was okay. But it was a crazy, crazy experience to go from like such a high to such a low in the same day, but it ended up working out and he was completely fine, but it was just a crazy experience. And that was the first real acting. I had done a recurring role on a Nickelodeon series prior, but that was the first role that kind of really got me in the business. And a few years had passed, and I had always wanted to get I'd always wanted to get into the producing side and production. And I had this story that I wanted to tell, and it was about my great grandfather's story. And he was a well-known speed skater in New York in the 20s and 30s. He was an immigrant Jew, came to the States in 1923 for a better life, wasn't able to compete on Olympic ice because of the double stigma at the time. And so it was just unheard of to hear about an immigrant Jewish athlete competing in the Olympics for the United States at that time. And so I thought to myself, wow, imagine not being able to reach the pinnacle of your sport, of your career, because of something that you can't change. I mean, maybe he beat Olympic champions off the ice, but he wasn't able to wear that gold medal on the ice, which I think is a tragedy. And so before he passed, I told him I was going to do something for him, either make a movie, write a book, something just to honor him. And when he passed, I remember sitting on a balcony in Los Angeles and just saying, you know what? I'm just making a phone call. I'm just starting this process and I'm going to make a documentary on his life. And I called a cinematographer that I had worked with as an actor, and we started making this movie. We went to Ellis Island. We videoed where my great grandfather arrived in the States, and we went to the handball courts that he used to play at, the ice skating rinks, everything. And I thought, okay, this is going to be a little family video that I play at Thanksgiving for my aunt and uncle, and everyone will get a kick out of it.
Right.
And athletes slowly started reaching out. And like Evander Holyfield, Apollo Ono, Allison Felix, Greg Louganis, Robbie Rogers, all these athletes that wanted to speak out against racism, homophobia, religious prejudice, and just use their platform to better society and help the younger generations, and not just shut up and play. And I thought, this is a really, really cool idea, and this is a great to kind of help with the movement that was already happening, because there was a movement in sports happening at that time. Athletes were coming out for the first time as gay, like professional athletes that were actually playing at the time and active. They were coming out and speaking out, and LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and Carmelo Anthony at the ESPYs, I remember that year, were speaking out against police brutality. So there was a whole movement that was happening. Athletes were kneeling. There was a movement, and we kind of just became part of that movement. And athletes wanted to use our film to tell their stories. So it was an honor to be that catalyst for those athletes and for my great grandfather in telling their stories. And I'm just so proud of that movie. And that movie is the reason why I started my company, and why I'm producing about 5 movies per year at the moment.
That's amazing, man. That's absolutely amazing. I had no idea. And I mean, my first question is, what's the name of that documentary?
That film is called On Thin Ice.
How can people see that?
You can watch it on Apple TV, Amazon Prime, pretty much anywhere movies are digitally.
And what's been? I mean, from that particular moment, then what's that journey been like? Where you said, "Hey, like this is what I'm going to do," and starting Price Productions. I mean, has it been a journey where you've been learning continuously along the way? It's been struggle then success. Has it been I mean, because from looking from the outside in, it looks like you're doing more than 5, 6 films a year. And I got to take my hat off to you because that's a really, really strong thing to be doing in Hollywood.
Oh, thank you, man. No, it means a lot. No, it has been a complete struggle, success, tightrope the entire way through. Starting out, I had no idea how to make a movie. It was my first film, and just figuring out how to finance a movie, how to package a movie, how to distribute a movie, crew up, loan against, tax credits and all that stuff. I mean, it was all new, completely new to me. I'd never done any of it, and I ended up having to do all of it and learn it all in a short amount of time and figure it out. And I did, and realized quickly that it was coming to me pretty easily. And so I just kept rolling into the next project. People came to the screening, just said, "Hey, I see that you did this on that one. Do you want to come help me on this?" And I did. But yeah, I mean, starting out, it was a complete struggle because it was a whole new landscape for me. And it's constantly, I mean, making movies are not, they're not easy to, get done. We're fortunate that we're in this business. There are other lines of work that I'm sure are a lot more stressful than movie making. Like, at the end of the day, I love what I do, and I can wake up every day proud of that, because I'm happy to get on set and make a movie. It's the greatest thing ever. But yeah, I
I,
mean, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, no, no. I think you hit a really interesting point too, because I do think that sometimes, like from the outside looking in, people think it's all red carpets and movie premieres, and I think it's quite funny sometimes because you do see a movie premiere and you see like the lead actress interviewed and she's raving about the director and raving about the team, and it's the best experience of their life.
Hmm.
But the truth is like it's kind of like 99% of the time it had been like arguments on set, and it's not red carpets. It's like 3 a.m. starts, and everything's over budget, and it's raining when it's supposed to be sunny, and
Hmm.
this actor didn't show up. It's still work, isn't it? It's not red carpets, and everyone loves everyone.
No, you have to kind of have that mindset going in and know that if you're making a movie, there's going to be several obstacles and unexpected situations that are thrown your way, that you just have to figure out the equation on each one. And it's not for everybody. It's a process, and it's not easy to make a movie. It certainly isn't. But again, I'm fortunate that I get to do what I love.
Well, I touched on it before, Price Productions, and obviously the slate that you get completed each year, and it is really tricky to make a feature film. A lot of people, as you know, I mean, they'll make one film and then it'll be a year of filming and then a year of post and then a year of distribution,
Mm.
and that's a big achievement in itself. But I mean, for what you're doing at the moment, 5 or 6 films a year, and I did mention some of these films in the intro, which we can dive into. But I mean, what's your best advice for someone who wants to actually start, a slate and wants to complete more than one film a year?
That's a great question. and and I think it's just work ethic. It's just constantly being able to juggle multiple films at a time, compartmentalize, and uh, yeah, and just go. Like literally, don't let anything stop you. And I think it's certainly possible, but it's all about drive and work ethic, and also the passion for the projects. Like if you're going out and you're trying to make a lot of movies just to make a lot of movies, that's, yeah, like it might not happen, because I think the passion really has to be there. When I'm passionate about a subject matter, um, or a storyline, whatever it is, an actor that's involved, maybe it's based on maybe it's a biopic, whatever it is. If I'm 100% attached to this story, and I'm behind it and I'm passionate about it and I know that it has to be told, and I'm going to work that much harder. And so I really think that passion is kind of the driving force to being able to make this amount of product per year.
Well, it's really remarkable. One of the films that I touched on was Murder at Hollow Creek. Now, I did just a disclaimer here. I may be biased. I went into this film not knowing anything at the premiere at the Beverly Hills Film Festival. Um, I thought it was awesome, and then to learn some of the challenges that you face shooting it because of COVID restrictions, and keeping in mind, it's shot out of state. If you want to elaborate on that, but for anyone, check this film out. It is really, really good. It's really entertaining, but also, I mean, the way you stretch that budget as well to really bring that to life. Um, can you unpack that film for us? What it was like shooting, and what was, say, the most memorable actors or actors you worked with on that?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the kind words on it, because it was a baby for me. I spent so much time with this movie, and it was certainly a process. It did move kind of quickly, but the writing took me about a year, and I had everything kind of detailed as far as how I wanted to tackle everything. I knew the writing would take me about a year. I was able to tackle about 10 to 15 pages per day. When I wasn't producing, when I wasn't on set, I would sit down at my laptop, I would turn everything off, and I would just write about 10 to 15 pages per day. I said, that's what you're going to do. You're going to get there in this amount of time. And about that 12-month marker came around, and I was basically completed with the first draft. And at that point, I started building the cast. I just found a name or two that I knew had that sales value to warrant a potential investment that justified the budget, and then I went out and tried to secure the financing. I brought on a director, and kind of the pieces started to come together. Getting on set for this in pre-pro, it was pretty much a shit show, because our director was on set for another movie also in Mississippi at the time. So it wasn't that for the sets weren't that far apart. But he wasn't able, it was like, I think like a 2 hour drive. and he wasn't able to be on set for pre-pro. So I was going out, I was scouting every day with the line producer, and we were just figuring out the best locations for this, how everything's going to come together location wise and all of that. And our team did such an amazing job on the ground. Our line producer, our production manager, everybody just absolutely killed it because we had no choice. Like we just were in such time constraints. But eventually, our director David Lipper arrived to the set, and we were able to, really get him up to speed quickly. The fact that he was able to direct this movie, to come in and do as good of a job as he did, without being on set really for pre-production, without scouting and being there at all for pre-pro, is just a testament to his drive and his will to get this movie done, and he did it really, really well. So kudos to him and everybody that really got it done on the ground in prep, because it wasn't easy. And then production rolled around, and yeah, we, like you said earlier, I mean, we only had certain actors for specific time frames. So to get everything together, we had to shoot half the movie right away, and then we had to break for a week and shoot the other half of the movie. So it was figuring out little things like that that were imperative in order to get it done.
Well, it's got a really cool cast, and for anyone that's kind of listening, and go and check it out. Where can we watch it? And I thought I had got it correctly, but it came out on Apple TV. Is that correct?
It came out yesterday on Apple TV. It's on demand as well, Spectrum on demand. You can watch it pretty much anywhere movies are sold digitally right now and on demand. But Apple TV, Google Play, Fandango, on demand, and yeah, and I'll let you guys know. I know we're going to be on Amazon too. We're going to be on Amazon too as well, so I'll let you guys know when our link is live on Amazon.
Well, it's and just for the shout out too, like some great actors in that, like Perry Reeves, I thought was great. You mentioned David Lipper, Jessica Lords, you know, uh, Isabella's on there, Mickey Rourke, Jason Patric, yourself. It's a really stacked cast.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, Perry Reeves, the first one you mentioned there, Perry is just incredible in this movie. And when I wrote the character, I thought of her. So it was one of those things where I literally was writing, she was in my head. I called her the second I was done with the script, and I think she was the first actor that came on board.
That's a good
So,
indication it's going to be a good movie then. Yeah.
and she's a terrific actress, and I grew up watching her in Entourage, and I think she's fantastic.
Mrs. Ari Gold. That was a great character
Correct.
too. Um, Another film I thought we could lend into, and this was the chance working with Mel Gibson among quite a few others, Josh Trammell, and is Bandit. How did you get involved in that one, and what was I guess you could say, an experience working on that film?
Yeah, we came in with a big financing portion of that movie, and really helped also in the casting process, and any way we could. But yeah, it was a great experience to be involved in that production, and the producers are all great, and we're working together again now. And Alan Unger, the director, who we're partnering with on something else as well, is brilliant, and his ideas for the movie were spectacular. When I saw his sizzle, when he sent me the sizzle, I think it was for one of the major film markets. I was enamored with how he was able to use music to tell the story, and it was all 80s music because the story was set in the 80s, and the music was incredible, and it was just so special. And that sizzle just really, I called him right after I saw it, and I said, this movie is going to be incredible. I haven't seen it yet, but based on what I just saw, I'm super impressed. And we quickly started talking and moved on to another project together. But I'm a huge music fan, so anytime I see a director really understanding music and having that musically inclined nature, I think it's super important. I think you, as a director, you have to kind of understand music and how it kind of enforces everything and helps tell the story. I think it's I think someone like Alan who has that understanding, it's so helpful.
Yeah, definitely. The interesting thing I remember, you talk about the music. I actually was watching that movie on my way to Canada, like on the plane. Which I won't spoil the storyline for anyone too much, but the interesting thing is I mean, I got off the plane and it was the music and the soundtrack that stuck with me more, especially because it does has that sort of '80s vibe to it.
Yep.
And I thought Josh's acting in it was really good too. Just that was like a not on the surface role so much. Like he did a great job of definitely kind of building up, the stakes and obviously portraying a character. He's in just about every scene, I think he was. So shout out to him as well.
Josh did an excellent job in that movie. It was one of my favorite roles that I had seen him play. I thought he was fantastic in it, and he really brought a levity to the character that was important for the movie, and he was spectacular. And Mel Gibson and Josh together were amazing. I grew up watching Mel, The Patriot. I've seen that movie about 100 times. I'm a history buff, so anything Revolutionary War, Civil War, I loved as a kid. So I would just watch The Patriot on repeat, and he and Keith Ledger in that movie were, I mean, two just amazing actors of our time. And so watching Braveheart, and all those movies that Mel did early on, I think I always wanted to work with him. So having that opportunity to work with Mel was also huge for me.
Yeah, I mean, coming from Australia, you hit the nail on the head. Like his body of work, even Mad Max and Lethal Weapon and
Hmm.
those films back in the day too, when there was less special effects, and I think actors had to be relied on a little bit to be a little bit more charismatic and a little bit more, bringing things to life. He's amazing, absolutely amazing. There is some other titles I want to quickly run through with you, which very, very interested. And also shout out to any of these projects as well, if you can let us know where people can watch them or when they'll be coming out. But one is Hellfire. Can you talk about that project and who's in that?
Yeah, Hellfire stars Stephen Lang, Harvey Keitel, and Dolph Lundgren, and that's a really really fun movie. It's nonstop action. And I executive produced it, and we also we brought a lot of money to that movie, and helped throughout the process. It looks just so good. Isaac did such a good job, the director, and the team down in Arkansas. It was just a great experience. So we're looking forward to that. That's coming out later this year in 2024.
And another film, Slant. What can you tell us about Slant?
Slant we just shot up in Vancouver. That stars Steven Dorff and Terry Chen. Steven is another actor I grew up watching that I've always loved. I've always loved him. And when I was, acting full time, he was somebody that I looked up to, and so it was cool to get to work with him too. He was really really good in Slant, and that's an important story because it's about a young Asian man who goes on a mission to find out info about his father because he never met his father, and he figures out that his father was the head of one of these major crime syndicates in his city, and he tries to follow in his father's footsteps, and he ends up at a major crossroads. So yeah, I think it's a really really cool concept. There's a great message behind it, and those are the types of stories that Price Productions likes to get behind. Not only, films that are marketable, but films that are important to me. Because, like I said earlier, if I'm passionate about a subject matter, then, we're going to go full throttle on it because at the end of the day, we want to tell stories that help in some capacity. That movie, I think, is not only a movie that the audience can go and escape their lives and just see a fun action movie, but also take something away from it at the end of the day. So we try to go after projects that are in that vein, and it all started with On Thin Ice.
Well, you're definitely a humble guy, Kelly, because I know that you're just rattling it off like we shot this one in Vancouver and we shot this one in Arkansas and this one here. It does take a lot of moving pieces to put these together. I mean, your experience, I mean, being in LA, but then shooting in, say, Canada, tax credits is obviously a big deal. Why
hmm
productions do that. But I mean, in general, what's the experience like shooting a production, or let's say an LA production in Canada?
Yeah, I mean Canada's great. It's way different than shooting in the States. We shot in Mississippi several times, and it's just a completely different experience. But if we can shoot in the U.S. or Canada, great. And it turns out that a lot of states and provinces are giving you those tax credits or incentives now, that really, really help the production. We have to go overseas less. I would like to keep as much production in the States and Canada as possible, just because it's more convenient for the entire team. If we have an actor for 3 days, that's a big name and helping to sell the movie. If we're shooting in Latvia, it might be difficult for them to go and do their arc on a major TV series right afterwards if they're traveling in from Bangladesh or wherever. So it's a lot easier to shoot here, and we're grateful that a lot of these states like Mississippi and Arkansas and Oklahoma and provinces like Ontario are really helping with those tax incentives. So it's been a great experience shooting in Canada and the States.
For anyone that's listening right now and they're kind of prepping a film that maybe could be shot, just about anywhere, what do you think is the most tax friendly state or place to shoot right now that gives you the best return?
Yeah, it's tough because there are states that do have a 35% tax credit or incentive, that aren't giving that 35% right now because they don't have it. So it could be a 2-year wait to actually see that 35% or 30% or 25% or whatever it is. And so you have to choose wisely and make sure you have several conversations with the film commission, go down there, meet with them in person. I was just down in the South meeting with a film commission down there and just, finalizing things for one of our movies. I think it's really important to get all of the specifics, get down there on the ground, and know that it's the right place for you. But there are several locations right now in the U.S. that have those tax credits, like a Mississippi, a Georgia. So it's just about finding the right place for you and your production, the right landscape for your production as well, and all that stuff. So yeah, definitely dive deep into it because it's a really big part of the entire process and making sure that the investors are good with it and that you mitigate risk for them by having that. So yeah.
I think it's so interesting because you shot Murder at Hollow Creek in Mississippi. Is that right?
hmm Yes.
And the interesting thing is yeah, like you can definitely see the landscape fits with the story.
hmm
And I really like what you said about obviously making sure that it does wherever you're shooting, it kind of makes sense while you're there. Um, but
Yeah.
the AKA, if you're shooting in Oklahoma for the tax credit, but you're trying to make it look like Manhattan, um, or the Rocky Mountains, it could be a little different. But there's lots of room to move. Um, at the moment, I believe you're just about to shoot something in Los Angeles. Can you talk about that film?
Yeah, we're shooting this really, really cool movie called Tender, in Los Angeles, and we're gearing it towards a festival. It's one of our lower budget projects, but the script is just so strong. And we're just so passionate and so excited about it. And we're putting the final pieces of the cast together right now. And then we start shooting August 22nd. And it's a few
That's really,
locations in LA.
and that's called Tender.
Tender, yeah. Yeah, Tender, Tender.
When you're shooting these projects, are you signing on distribution before you start? Are you do you prefer to sort of shoot and then look for the sales agent to find the best deal, or to sign on a sales agent once you've got the rough cut? Like, how do you generally recommend working full price productions?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think every single movie we make is different. It just really depends. After I put that package together and I have the stars on board, it's just really the best option on the table. Is it one private equity investor that's funding the entire movie that wants to wait to take it to sales and distribution till the movie's made and then take it to market and hopefully get a better deal if the movie's good? Or is it that, we don't have all of the equity that we need? We need to take it to a sales company to sell off certain territories in order to get there and reach our full budget. So it really just depends on how that process unfolds. And it is different for every movie. Like we have a movie, one of our big ones launching at TIFF next month. And that has a big sales company on board. So it just, like I said, every single movie is different, but we've had several that were just funded private equity, and we didn't have to bring on distribution prior. And then we've had others that we brought on sales and distribution prior. And yeah, you know,
I think that's awesome advice, because I think too that sometimes tends to be where people get delayed in shooting something, because like nowadays it's different from, like, 10, 15 years ago. I think you'd agree, where it was like, you had to have a $100,000 Panavision camera, and it was like, straight to
right,
DVD,
right.
or the cinema only. But I think now, like you said, I mean, if you're passionate about a project,
Hmm.
don't get bogged down in thinking, okay, well, I'll just wait till I get a big distribution deal based off the
No,
script.
right.
Just go and shoot it, because you can get a great distribution deal, once you hit post. Um,
Yeah.
which sadly, I still see people around LA that they're kind of, they're waiting 12 months in on a project. There's another quick project I want to talk to you about, actually, just on that, which is really interesting. It's called Mad Props.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that one for us? Because in the name, it makes sense. It's a good name.
Absolutely. Yeah, Mad Props. It's such a fun project. So we made that movie last year and it came out in February in theaters in February. It's a documentary about a banker in Oklahoma that always wanted to get involved in movies but never really knew how. So he started buying movie props and he would go to these auctions. He would just track down like the greatest movie props of all time, like the ball gag from Pulp Fiction, lightsaber from Star Wars, whatever it was. And the whip from Indiana Jones, and he would just go on these road trips and end up starting this collection of the greatest movie props ever. And so the movie follows him around the globe, just going to these auctions, finding these props, going to people's houses, and it's really a great history of film. And for any cinephiles out there, I highly recommend it. I learned so much about props, about their worth, and I grew up with trading sports cards like jersey cards or holograms, Showtime holograms or whatever it was, and that was my thing growing up. We were trading cards, but movie props, it's a whole nother level, and it's like kind of a quiet industry. People don't really talk about it that often. So it's really it's such a learning experience to watch that movie. And then we got it picked up for a pilot. So we started making the TV series for Mad Props. After the movie came out, we got a lot of people reaching out and a lot of companies reaching out about making it into a series. And we started shooting the pilot, and we just finished the pilot in LA a few weeks ago. It's starring Patrick Warburton as one of the hosts, along with Tom Biachini, who was our host in the movie. So it's Tom Biachini and Patrick Warburton together, and we have a guest on every episode. And Ron Perlman is the guest on our first episode. And Ron was just so much fun to work with, and Patrick and Ron actually knew each other prior, so that was cool for them to reconnect. And I just absolutely love that project, and it was great to get into another documentary.
These are really cool projects you're a part of, Kelly. Honestly, I mean that, like you said, like that's an audience I don't think many people have tapped into. But like you were talking about with trading cards, I mean, the amount of movie memorabilia, even just like the film can be not a big hit to start with, and then 5-10 years in, like Bottle Rocket with the Wilson brothers, it's
Yep.
like it becomes a cult classic, and all of a sudden people are like, what happened to that car on set, or what happened to that jacket he's wearing? It's also like I guess, an investment for some people. They buy it for one price now, and then I'm thinking like a lightsaber from Star Wars, and then in 20 years' time, it's obviously going to have some more value.
100%. 100%.
Just got to hope the film makes money. Like if if they're buying for a high price, they got to make sure that the film gets an audience later on. Um, I've got three more really quick questions for you because I'm aware you're a very busy man with time, and also I think these would be really valuable for just the filmmaker that's listening, and someone that's in the industry and it's probably at that point where they're they're starting to make their own content, or they're starting to take big meetings and speak to the right people. But
Yeah.
who have you learnt the most off, and what was that advice you learnt?
That is such an awesome question. I hope you ask that in every interview because it's so freaking great. It doesn't have to be someone in the business, right?
No, it can be anyone in
Anybody.
life that's helped you get
Yeah.
where you are.
My great grandfather, I remember sitting with him on the steps at my aunt's house. I must have been 8 years old, and he said something along the lines of, "If you don't like your job, don't do it. Love what you do." And it was so simple, but it really resonated with me, and I think I I really followed that advice my entire life. And so I would have to say my great grandfather in that moment really helped me. And then
That's awesome
and
advice. Yeah.
yeah, I always looked at him as a mentor. I mean, he was 90 some odd years old when I was growing up. He lived till he was 99. So he was up there, but he was always very wise and would say things like that like just out of nowhere. That I mean, just such a simple line can be so helpful for an 8-year-old kid.
I
So
I can see that working. So I can just see that working for so many levels as well. Because, I mean, if you're in the movie business, you do see as well. You see a lot of people that are fame chasers, or people that are they like the idea of being a successful actor or famous actor, or they like the idea of being a director, but they don't want to do the work, and they don't want to do all the things that, like, audition, or as a director, like write your own stuff, and then start at the bottom. They don't want to do that. And I think that's a real key, isn't it? Because it's very, very rare ever that someone's going to simply just arrive in Hollywood and become Steven Spielberg overnight.
absolutely, you have to have that passion and that drive and that love for what you do, because if you don't, exactly, you can end up in a place you don't want to be. So having that is super, super important. In not just in your career, but in other areas of life too. Like you have to have that love for something, for your partner, for your whatever it is, because it's everything, right? Um,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
there's a couple other instances I remember too. My dad, before a soccer game, I was 10 years old, and he said, if you score 2 goals, I'll take you to get a card pack. If you score 3 goals, you'll get 2 card packs or whatever. And it was a little bribe for me to score a goal in soccer, and I don't remember the specifics, but all I remember, it was something along the lines of score and you get a card pack. And like I said earlier, I,
It's a
I,
nice little kicker there. Yeah.
I collected sport cards as a kid. So, trading cards as a kid, and so just to even if the card pack was $1 or whatever, it was still like I loved it. It was amazing for me. It was just something that I loved, and I love sports, and I collected cards. And my dad said, "Score a goal and you'll get one." It was ridiculous amount of incentive for me. So I remember that game. I didn't score, but I can tell you everybody knew who I was on that field because I was in everybody's business. Every single person on that field and on the sidelines knew who I was because I was doing everything I could to score. And I remember at the end of the game, there was someone was about to score on the other team, and I dove and I was kicking on the ground. I was kicking like they had to break us. I was literally like kicking in the air. And you're not supposed to kick like on the ground in the air in soccer. It's a penalty. And I was inside the goalie's area, inside the goalie's box. So it was a penalty kick for the other team. And they ended up scoring that goal and they won the game because of that. And I was so defeated because I knew that I put everything that I could into this game.
Right, right.
Everything. I left everything on the table, and that last move at the end of the game cost our team the game. So I hung my my head at the end of the game, and I said to my dad, I said like sheepishly, I said, "Do I still get a card pack?"
What did he say?
He's he took my head in his arms and he said, after that performance, absolutely. And I just knew that like in that moment, yeah, I didn't score, but I put everything I had on the line. And I know my dad saw that because anybody could see that. And so I think that was a lesson that I still to this day apply, is that, you just have to have that passion and that incentive and that drive. And even if you don't get there, like even if I don't score, even if I prepare to make a movie and I don't make it, but I give everything that I had to it, at the end of the day I can sleep. And so that is one of the most important lessons I've learned in my life. And even if it was, had to do with card packs and soccer, it really changed my it really changed the landscape for me as far as understanding, because in school I wasn't a great student at all. I was a pretty bad student. But understanding that if I just applied myself to whatever I wanted to do, whether it was school, whether it was my career, whether it was my relationships, that I would have an outcome that I was okay with at the end of the day because I know I gave everything I had. So as silly as a conversation as it was, it really changed my life. So
You've inadvertently actually kind of answered my follow-up question to this, which is really helpful. And I agree, because I think from the simplest form, you look at Hollywood, and someone auditions for something and they don't get it, and then they turn around and they're really defeated. A lot of the time it's things you can't control, your height, your weight, your voice, your agent, things like that. You know how it
hmm
goes. But I think the simplest thing is if you gave it everything you got, and you went for it, and you didn't get it, at least you, like you said, you can sleep well at night, you can hang your head up high and said, hey, it just wasn't meant to be. As opposed to the person that simply takes it for granted that they should have that role, goes to the
yeah,
audition, does the self tape, doesn't get it. Well, it's like you didn't really play yourself. Like you don't know
right,
what could have happened, and you don't. You're always going to have that what if, which
exactly.
yeah,
Or the
which
person that doesn't try at all, you
exactly.
know?
And at least like, again, you can, as long as you've given it every chance you got, you can say you did everything you could. Then and usually something better comes along, or something like slips into another sort of path of opportunity when you do that. The question
I
I was
agree.
going to say, that the follow-up question, I wanted to ask you, because you've been a successful actor and a successful writer, successful producer. Um, First one, for actors, what's your best piece of advice for someone who's in the entertainment, or going to Hollywood to be an actor, or is, in Hollywood and wants to be an actor right now based on the industry?
My best advice for aspiring actors is create your own content, because right now, obviously, there's a lack of content out there. You're seeing an uptick in the amount of well-known actors doing lower budget indie projects right now, because there's a lack of product. So if you're an aspiring actor and you're having trouble getting a gig, which a lot of actors are right now, and you can find a way to throw your stuff up on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, and get exposure, get yourself out there, and start building your brand and maybe getting an agent. I think those are all things that could be really, really helpful right now.
Awesome answer. Awesome. And this is the second part question from the lens of a writer producer.
Hmm.
I mean, what's your best advice right now based on the state of the industry?
Don't panic would be my advice. I think that we've had a lot of obstacles in the film business over the past few years. We had COVID, we had strikes. I think staying calm and figuring out the best way of keeping your movie alive, or your business alive, or whatever it is, um, just stay calm and don't panic, and figure it out, because the business is changing. We're coming out of an unprecedented time in our business, the double strike and obviously COVID. And I mean, that's when you really buckle down. I think that's when it really separates the you know the top rung from the others. If you can really figure out how to make a movie during COVID and you were successful doing it, I think anything can come our way, any obstacles, and I'm okay with it now, because I saw what happened during. First of all, my first film was a complete. It was just crazy making my first movie and not knowing how to do anything and figuring it out. And so it was a learning experience, and I was successful with it. So after that, I always said to myself, any obstacle that comes my way, we're going to be able to figure it out one way or another. And through COVID, it was the same experience. We were able to make, I think we made 6 movies during COVID. And
That's insane.
obviously,
That
we,
that's insane. I did one and barely survived it, Kelly. So you did
no,
six. It's incredible.
it was absolutely crazy with the COVID protocols and everything. But yeah, I mean, you made a movie during that time. You know how much of a nightmare. I mean, it was. So being able to deal with that, whatever, comes our way as producers or writers now, I feel like we've seen we've seen the worst of it, and knock on wood, because yeah, I think this is a really good time in the business. So I think, I'm really positive about where the business is going right now. But yeah, when those obstacles do occur, just don't panic. Know that you're going to get through it. And now is a time where a lot of producers, actors, writers are wondering what's going on, because it was supposed to be this explosion of product and it isn't. So I think, again, just don't panic, and it's going to change. I think we're in a really good place in the business, and um I think we're gonna be okay.
And again, this is as you said, just not panicking because things aren't going your way, whether it be on a film set or whether it now in the industry. I think that's the best way to look at it as well, because if you get really good at performing in uncomfortable situations, I think when the situations become better, you can lock in and really
Yeah.
perform well.
Yep.
Um, Again, I mean, 5, 6 films a year, really, really good films. Is there any other films that you've done that you'd love to do a shout out or for the audience to go and watch that you're very proud of?
Thank you so much, man. Appreciate that. Yeah, we made The Curse of Wolf Mountain. I wrote and produced that, and that's out. That's available now on Apple TV, Amazon Prime, everywhere. Movies are sold digitally, and had a great time on that. Speaking of COVID, we shot that smack in the middle of COVID, and so yeah, that's one of those movies that I'm extremely proud of because of the story behind it. I had to write this script within 3 weeks. We had another movie that we were going to make that fell apart, and I had already assembled the production team, and I needed a script. And I just went upstairs, and I started writing, and I had a finished draft within, I think, 5 days, and we were on set within 3 weeks later.
That's
I,
impressive. Yeah. That's
I've
Was that
never.
some late nights writing, or was that you were in the
I didn't
flow?
sleep. Yeah, no, I didn't sleep. It was over a December break, and I did not sleep. I remember my family being like, "Man, Kelly's just not leaving his room. Like, what's going on?" I literally, I would have my laptop in bed as my wife was sleeping next to me, and I would just start writing at 10 o'clock at night, and I would still be writing at 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. I'll never forget the experience. So because of that, shout out to The Curse of Wolf Mountain.
Did you have Danny Trejo in mind for that character when you were writing?
Danny, you know what? I did. That was, no, I didn't. I didn't have Danny in mind while I was writing. In Murdered Hollow Creek, I had a lot of people in mind as I was writing, and I ended up bringing them on board. Like Jack Kessie played my brother in the movie, and he played the role of Nick. And then Perry Reeves, like we talked about earlier, and Mickey Rourke was also somebody that I considered for it. But on The Curse of Wolf Mountain, no, the cast just kind of came together organically. They weren't any preconceived ideas about the cast, and it was just like who's available because we had such time constraints on that one. It was like who's available, who's right for this, and who do we have connections to, and who can we bring on board right now? you know, so
Well, shout out to our mutual friend, Mr. David Lipper, as well for directing that as well.
shout out to David.
Um,
Absolutely.
we're just about out of time, Kelly. I mean, I could ask you a million questions. Every single answer has been fantastic. Uh,
Thank you.
for Price Productions, how can people get in contact with you? And again, what's the future look like or let's say the next 12 months for Price Productions for what's coming up?
Yeah, we're really, really excited about our film that's gonna launch at TIFF. That's gonna be shooting late Q4, early Q1 this year, and yeah, super excited about that. Can't really dive into the specifics yet. We're going to be hearing more about that really, really soon. It's an amazing cast. It's an amazing team, and we're so excited about that. But
Have
as
we got a
far as
title? Do they look out for a title for that one?
that one's called Cowboy Junkies.
Cowboy Junkies, cool name. Cool.
Yeah. So definitely stay informed on that one, and then we've got several. We've got Tender about to shoot, and several lined up after that. And Murdered Hollow Creek came out yesterday. We've got Hellfire coming out later this year. Mafia Wars with Tom Welling and Cam Gigande coming out later this year. And so yeah, follow us on Instagram at Price Productions Ltd. And then you can check us out, priceproductionsltd.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Keli Price, Keli Price. And yeah, you stay up to date on what we have going on, and happy to connect with anyone who reaches out.
Kelly, it's been an absolute pleasure to be speaking with you. And again, I've said it before, but the run that you're on, the films that you make, and just the volume that you're getting out there, whether it's COVID or whether it's stag strikes, it's very, very impressive. And I think for any filmmaker that's listening to this, I mean, there's so much to unpack and take away, but whatever you're doing is working. And massive hats off to you.
Thank you so much, James. It was an absolute pleasure chatting with you, my friend.